In the next part of the programme, I want to ask you about your experiences of living next door or indeed underneath antisocial neighbours. Do you know what that experience was like? Have you ever reported someone to the police or the council? Your stories after the news.
Local and vocal across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
I spent many years living under people who would have parties at least once every 2 weeks that would run till 5 or 6 in the morning, and it's miserable. I'd be laying there with earplugs in, still feeling the boom of the music. I'd be calling the council. I've even considered pulling the power on a block of flats to stop a party. It can just be a miserable experience. So if you've got a story to share, very keen to hear from you in this part of the programme. Do you know what it's like to live next to, or indeed underneath, antisocial neighbours? You can call me 03459 455 555 or your text to 81333, starting your message with 3CR. Nigel Parsons is from the Answers investigation, a private detective agency which checks out potential neighbours for people. Fascinating. Morning to you, Nigel.
Morning, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. What an interesting area of work.
I'm actually more thinking this morning about a number of my friends who haven't got beards anymore. They are going, aren't they?
They are going, apparently. Not in my life. I'm the only one of my tribe without a beard, but there you are. How did you get into your line of work, incidentally, Nigel? What an interesting thing for you to be doing.
Oh, I can't remember. It's so long ago. The company's been around about 23 years. I've been around a lot of that. It was an accident and just got hooked.
So you say it's an accident. How did this accident occur?
God, I really can't remember. It was something I just started doing for a while and got completely hooked into it, and we're all like that. We have people who come and people who go very quickly, or they stay with us forever. And there's a colleague of mine, Andy, in fact, he's spoken to JBS before. Yeah. Some years back. I mean, he's been with us a dozen years. It's fascinating stuff. I love it.
Well, yeah, it sounds fascinating. Well, I won't plough the furrow of trying to ask you how it began because you clearly can't remember. But I'm sure you can.
Alzheimer's kicking in.
Yeah, well, indeed, we'll get there. I'm sure you can explain to us all what the kind of what work you actually do and who you help.
Yeah, that could take a long time because we help everybody in private and business and commercial life. But I mean, the subject of neighbours, it comes up again and again and again.
Really?
I mean, really, principle of what you're talking about this morning is more cuts in government services. And yeah, money's got to be saved, but the whole bad neighbour issue can be just absolutely soul-destroying for people.
So if I come to you and I say, listen, I've got a really bad neighbour, really, really noisy neighbour, or a really antisocial neighbour, what could I hope for you to do for me?
Well, firstly, if you're talking to us, probably you've exhausted all the other avenues in the first place. I mean, the first thing people will do is talk to the local authority. They may be able to get hold of them. They may not be able to get hold of them. Resources are quite limited, and the actual power that's there at the end of the day is probably quite limited in itself. A lot of it, very often, is being able to get the evidence together so they can go to the right authorities and say, look, this is what is happening. My life is completely intolerable. And, I've got a shared party wall and I can't sleep. We've got whatever the reasons might be.
But with people now, surely most people have mobile phones, for example. If we were talking about noisy neighbours, most people can take videos and record sounds on their phone that they could collect as evidence. So what is it that you do above and beyond that makes your service necessary?
I think it's the difference between doing something, and I'm trying to pick my words, I'm trying to avoid the word amateur on something, but doing something that can be legally admissible and evidence gathering. And, a difference between a hard fact and, look, this is happening. And I think what happens very often with people who are doing it themselves, they'll end up with masses. There's hours and hours of recordings, and here they go again, often done quite in the heat of the moment as well. Whereas if you've got somebody who's looking at something clinically and dispassionately, can put it into a tight evidential form and bring out the salient facts in something.
So will you encamp yourself in someone's house for a period of time, or?
Not Not necessarily in the house, but possibly from the outside. I mean, so much of it is
What, surveillance from outside the house?
Yeah, indeed. Do you know, we also run a service, and this is using the private eye skills to check out neighbourhoods for people who move in house, just to get an idea of what life's really like rather than what the estate agent tells you. Some of the stories that come out from that, you just...
Hang on, so someone would call you and say, listen, I'm looking into moving into whatever it is, Barnes Close in this part of Hertfordshire, and I want to find out what the neighbourhood's like, what the neighbours are like. Will you be sat in a car like an old American stakeout, or how does it work?
Yeah, a mix of research and that practical side of getting the very real picture, not what it's like when you go around with the estate agent and the coffee fills the house and the house is tidy, and what actually happens on a Saturday night. We had one a couple of weeks ago. A couple, they were moving their mum. I mean, not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
Dad had died and trying to move mum into a sort of quiet area. And this place looked lovely, bungalow, block of flats opposite the road. Every Saturday night, there's a couple right on the top of the flats opposite, screaming rows, car going out, clipping the post, and that stuff wasn't coming out when they visited and looked at the house. Something they could have done themselves as well. Quite frankly,
well, I
just
guess
sort of looking at something, but...
I guess they could, but who wants to? Many people won't have the time to be sat in a car, trying to stay out late at night to see what's happening. I guess that's why you're there to provide that service.
Yeah, so clinically, it's a big thing to do, moving house. I mean, you spend.
Well, it's a huge investment. It's it's probably the biggest thing you'll ever spend money on. So you want to get it right. And do you have many case studies where people have actively, stopped their interest in a house or withdrawn an offer because they've realised that after your investigations, it's not somewhere they want to live?
I think out of those neighbourhood checks, probably about 15 to 20% don't go through because the real picture is different from the perceived picture on something.
How common would you say antisocial behaviour is in this country, in your experience? Is it something that would it be very unfair to suggest that it was in certain areas that already had bad reputations, or are there parts of the three counties, for example, that have very good reputations and being very smart neighbourhoods that still are beset by these kind of problems?
One would never name neighbourhoods for fear of the verbal reprisal that comes from it, but trust me, there are certain areas where the minute we hear them, there's a little quiet shudder thinking, oh, grief, not again.
Really? So you get repeat calls for certain places?
Yeah. And, we all know that, and it's a part of life. But people have to live together, and it can be a very difficult thing. There's an intangible way of thinking about it, and that's that if you take, 20 people, 50 people, whatever the number is, 19 of them will be the nicest people in the world, and one person won't. And if you think about any housing estate, you are probably living close on to 20-odd people. Chances are there is going to be somebody there who really doesn't care about the rest of the world. What's often worse is the actual conscious attrition that people have to deliberately go and make other people's lives annoying. We see that time and time again.
So you've uncovered people that from the evidence you've gathered, and your observations are that they are actively trying to be a pain in the backside for a neighbour.
Tim, worst one. Call from a husband. His wife was just in pieces, unable to go out of the house, claiming that the people next door had done everything from put feces on the doorstep to been into the house and done all sorts of things, to the point where he thought she was delusional, because she was so obsessed with it. And he'd actually come to us more to go and produce to her evidence to say, look, you're probably fantasising on some of this. And some of the things are ridiculous. However, we went through the whole exercise, and despite her sounding, and again I'm trying to pick my words carefully, but despite her sounding like she was possibly imagining an awful lot of this, when they saw the video of the guy with a water pistol filled with bleach firing it over the back garden fence onto the washing...
No!
when they saw the video of the chap coming over the fence at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when she'd gone out, opening the back door with a key that he purloined from somewhere, going in and moving things around in the back lounge, trust me, she was not delusional. And it had driven her completely into the ground. And people will do these things.
That's absolutely shocking. So once you gather that evidence, is that the kind of case that will therefore then go to a prosecution, the evidence has to be given to the police?
Yeah, on the back of the evidence.
Wowzers. Nigel, thank you so much for being there for us today. Really fascinating work, really interesting work. Nigel Parsons, who is from the Answers investigation, a private detective agency which checks out potential neighbours for people. Fascinating. Catching people spraying bleach on washing and rearranging someone's lounge. Absolutely creepy. Thank you so much for that story. If you've got something to share, 81333 on the text. Do start your message, of course, with 3CR.